Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about Bitcoin, and we're going to be providing an update to the bull market support band. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and check out the sale on the premium list, which you can find a link to in the description below, or go to intothecryptoverse.com. Let's go ahead and jump in. So we have a new weekly candle, therefore I think it is prudent to discuss the 20-week SMA and the 21-week EMA. And what's interesting is the range at which they are, at which they currently are, because it is actually getting pretty spread out here, just like it did over here. Actually, at some point, you can see it's getting pretty spread out. The 20-week SMA now is at 49.7K. The 21-week EMA is at 45.3K. So more or less, the bull market support band for Bitcoin now ranges from $45,000 to around $50,000. Okay, so 45K to around 50K. Now, that will vary depending on, the exchange that you use, plus or minus a few $100s, etc. So where are we today? Well, right now, the price of Bitcoin would need to rally approximately 15-16% to get back up to the 21-week EMA. We are just coming off of what looks to be a rejection of the bull market support band, at least in the short term. Okay, I mean, it's impossible to know when we're going to retest it again, but in the short term, it looks like a fairly systematic rejection of it. Now, the question I think that should be on everyone's mind, if it's not, is, what are we looking for, right? What are we looking for in this market to really start to get a little bit more bullish, right? I mean, because a lot of people right now are bearish. Okay, it's hard not to be bearish when you're just looking at a downtrend for the last 3 months, right? I mean, it's just what it is. So what are we looking for? I would argue there's still two things. One of two things we like to see. Either one. I don't really care which one. Just one of them I'd like to happen. One would be, let's get back above the bull market support band and hold it as support. If we can do that, right? If we can get back above it and hold it as support, then you could argue that the trend has shifted back in the bull's favor. It's just like over here back in the summer of 2021. There was no guarantee we were going to hold this, but we did, and then we ended up putting in a new all-time high. Right now, we've gotten rejected by that same support band. So here we got above it, and then we held it as support. On this one so far, we've had one rejection and then another rejection, right? So we've had two rejections. Crypto investors surely know what rejection feels like because we get rejected off this bull market support band all the time. You can see it's happened many times in the past. So then the question becomes, well, what can we generally expect when we get rejected off of the bull market support band? Well, typically, not always, but typically you at least revisit the lows or you put in a lower low. Okay, this is what we've seen in the past. It does not mean that it has to happen this time. There certainly is a chance that we could just go straight back up and maybe test it again this coming week. By the way, I think a lot of that is going to be dependent on what traditional markets do, right? I mean, we've been talking about this for a while on the channel, but the NASDAQ and Bitcoin are relatively correlated, especially during a time like this. And the NASDAQ and Bitcoin both put in their all-time highs in November. They both more or less been in a downtrend for the last 3 months. And we're coming to a fairly critical point now for the NASDAQ and for the S&P. And that is, are we going to put in a lower low, or are we going to hold the line and put in maybe a double bottom and then come back up? All right, so let's go through these scenarios. Well, if we put in a lower low, then you're looking at a potential scenario like the end of 2018, okay? And if you go look at what happened at the end of 2018, the NASDAQ came below its bull market support band, right? It came below it. It then came down, came back up to test the bull market support band, got rejected by it, and then it put in a lower low before then finally recovering, right? And then it actually recovered, and then the rest is history, right? So then the question becomes right now, are we going to put in a lower low? Are the markets going to be so spooked by what's going on in the world or, this general risk-off environment, whether it's geopolitical, whether it's macroeconomic, based on the Fed tapering and rolling over the balance sheet? It's anyone's guess, really. I mean, it's all a bunch of just speculation, of course. But the question is, will we put in a lower low, or will we put in a potential double bottom, or maybe even a slightly higher low? And whatever happens, right, the answer to that question, which we should be getting here in the next week or two, whatever happens, I do think will help define the market structure for crypto, probably for a few months, right? I mean, I do think this is more than likely the case. And so, what I generally think right now is that we'd like to see one of two things, right? One of them is getting back above the bull market support band and holding it as support, which we discussed. The other one is if we can ever get some type of capitulation with real volume. Okay. And right now, when we're looking at this market and looking at prior major capitulations, you can see that all of them had very little volume preceding the capitulation and then a lot of volume at the capitulation, right? Little volume preceding it, a lot of volume at the capitulation. Not a whole lot of volume preceding it. At the capitulation, a lot of volume. All of them. December 2018, March of 2020, May of 2021. All of them had a significant amount of volume to accompany them. Now, I also think it's worth playing devil's advocate against yourself and not getting, say, like this tunnel vision on saying something has to happen in a very specific way. The question could be, well, do we have to have some type of capitulation? Well, the obvious answer to that is no. And the reason why it's no is because you shouldn't be deterministic about anything, except maybe if Bitcoin trends up with time. But I mean, if we get back above the bull market support band and hold it as support, and something like this plays out, then you could argue, all right, well, we don't necessarily need some type of capitulation. And the reason you could argue that is there wasn't really a lot of volume that came in at the top. So why do we need a lot of volume to come in at a theoretical bottom? Okay, I still think that a capitulation with a lot of volume would be the most easiest to navigate, because when they happen, they're pretty obvious, and you basically just wipe everyone out in a few days, and then we start to trend back up for a while. But you can argue, like, if you look at 2019, there was a lot of volume at the top, and then we also had a lot of volume at the bottom. So perhaps the argument could go, well, we didn't really get a lot of volume at the top, not in terms of, say, like some blow off tops, and then why do we need to see something like that at the bottom? We don't necessarily have to see anything, specific, but these are just things that I'm looking for, right? I'm either looking for us to get back above the bull market support band, which we could do without a lot of volume and hold it as support, or for some type of capitulation with a lot of volume to try to help us pin down what a potential local bottom could be, or at least a change in the momentum of the market. Okay, so again, right now, just to sort of summarize here, we've gotten rejected. We just got rejected off of the bull market support band. This is our second attempt of getting rejected, right? Here's attempt number 1 right here. This was attempt number 2. If we go back to the most recent time where we saw some type of similar structure, you can go back to 2019 was the most recent time where we fell below the bull market support band. Our first attempt was rejected. Our second attempt was accepted, but then we had the pandemic, right? The pandemic dropped, and then the floor fell out, and then we sort of reset, and then we continued along the way. But regardless, and if you go back to 2018, you can see, right, we had one attempt here, 2 attempts. A lot of these you have to see, like, they can get above it, but it's holding it as support that's key. So that's what we're looking for, right? It doesn't really matter if we get above it or not. It's like, do we actually hold it as support? Because there's certainly examples where you can find where we have weekly closes above it, but as long as we don't hold it as support, then it's relatively meaningless. So, I don't say this to with any specific agenda. I really stand to benefit if Bitcoin goes up. But I also don't want people to prematurely celebrate if we do break above the bull market support band or something in the coming weeks, until we actually hold it as support and show and really identify either the strength or the lack thereof. So what are we doing right now off this rejection? Well, we're at least kicking the can down the road towards a future test, whenever that will be. Okay, I don't know when it's going to be, but we are kicking the can down the road. And we'll just have to be patient to see when it'll happen. And if that point, we'll have the ability for the bulls to take it back above the bull market support band, and then further the ability to then hold it as support. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. If you're not subscribed, give the video a thumbs up. Check out the sale on the premium list, intothecryptoverse.com. I'll see you next time. Bye.